Hey,
Hello, hello.
hello. We're live now.
We're
Uh,
officially live. We've been doing live. We've been doing some recordings now for a few videos now, right, Elisha? Like maybe 8 videos, 6 to 8 videos, something around there.
yeah,
And this is the first time we're going to be going live, so we're really excited to try this out. And this does actually connect to the chat. So if you are joining through YouTube or joining through Twitter, we'll be able to see those comments live, and we might be able to answer um, as we kind of go through that. So, yep, as you can see there, we'll throw those comments on the side as they come in. Um, but why don't we do a quick introduction, Elisha?
yeah. My name is Elisha Terrada. We both work for Fresh Consulting, and I work as technical innovation director. It's kind of big, like abstract title, but right now we're looking at like all things Web3, metaverse, looking at what's coming in the future. How can we leverage those technologies to do our business and also to create something useful for the community. And my primary, I guess, principle is in the software engineering. So I am interested in looking at Web3 through the lens of software developer. And we have a counterpart, Johnny Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you. Before I introduce myself, actually, I got to stop and talk a little bit more about Elisha. Elisha is very modest. Elisha's probably the most brilliant person I've worked with. He's got a very holistic view. Not just he does have a very very strong software background. He can build anything you can think of, and if he doesn't know it, he will learn it. He's a great learner. But on top of that, you studied business in school, didn't you, Elisha?
Yeah, I had a bachelor in the business administration and the entrepreneurship concentration. So that
Yep.
that wasn't quite marketable for getting a job.
Yeah.
But
So you have the business background. You have a really strong software background. He has a great design background where we don't technically always have to give him designs to go and build the thing, and he has a very good strong sense for UI UX. But on top of that, Elisha, you've actually built some businesses and you actually learned a lot in the process, and that's allowed Elisha to kind of grow and bring so much depth of experience. So we're really lucky to have him at Fresh Consulting. You've been here longer than I have. There was a period of time where you left and then now you're back, and
mhm.
we're just so excited to have you, and I'm excited to work with you side by side as we kind of build into the future and look ahead at all the amazing stuff that's happening in tech.
Wow, thanks for the intro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no worries. Yeah, I'm Johnny Rodriguez, not as a crazy of a background as Elisha. um yeah, so I'm our strategic innovation director. So yes, we both work with Fresh Labs, which is a part, kind of a portion of Fresh Consulting. We normally service clients. We're working with small and large clients, a lot of companies that are household names. Um, and then we work on some really innovative projects. Which is why we've been here forever, right? It's like we've both worked on the client side for a really long time, and built and worked on some amazing projects, sometimes taking us to the weekends and nights,
Mhm.
and sometimes even New Year's Day, like 2 or 3 times, Elisha, together, I
Yeah.
think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
um, with other coworkers. But it's always been a good time. And we more recently, in the last few years, Fresh Consulting, we have a lot of talent here in house, and we've said, hey, why don't we build our own products? Why don't we, we have all this talent. Why don't we focus and think about building our own products and maybe experiment, and let's keep looking ahead. One of the primary reasons we have the name Fresh in our title of Fresh Consulting, right, is because we want to help companies stay relevant, so being able to kind of match where we are with the times, and then also stay ahead and being able to stay fresh and relevant. So it's a really, really cool name that's part of the company there. And I that resonated with me as I looked at joining a company about 8 years ago now, Elisha. I think I joined in February 2014. So I'm coming up on my 8th year. But yeah, so I have a background in UI UX design. I really really like prototyping, interaction design, anything that involves kind of motion. So I do have a video kind of After Effects, kind of special effects type background, doing a lot of fun stuff with that. And then I also built websites. I was more on the front end, more particularly like WordPress, some JavaScript type stuff, um, and did some of that work here at Fresh. Did some UI UX projects at Fresh, and then now I oversee kind of our Fresh Labs department, and Elisha and I kind of co-lead what he talked about, right? Looking into the future.
Yeah. And I think what I appreciate about Johnny a lot, I think he's always on the forefront of like the cool things happening, and obviously a Web3 metaverse. That's like the new cool thing that's happening, and highlight a lot of interesting visual interactive aspect. Like he would always share actually playing with the technology, like especially with these 3D stuff, AR stuff, VR stuff, and he always bring like kind of visual excitement in the space. Like it's easy for me to see it and like get amazed by like, whoa, that's cool stuff that's happening. I'm glad someone like Johnny is like talking about it, showing these things, and also kind of painting the future of like it could be better if it also did this, and not just talking about it, but like you actually create like a visual motion mock-up of like how it could be better if the experience is improved in these new XR spaces. So I think that's like really cool aspect of showing the work that you do. Whereas I tend to be on more like a back burner. Like maybe I might share a few things here and there about software, but not as visually communicating to the community.
Mm.
And I think you kind of bring
Yeah,
that
it's a
strengths.
yeah, it turns out to be a good, kind of pairing with both of us, right? Where we kind of can fill in some of the gaps where maybe we can fill in the gaps where we are strong, and then kind of support where there are areas where the other is a little bit stronger. So
Mm,
it's kind of a cool combination. But I appreciate that extra little detail there. Yeah, I do enjoy that, and I think that's what's kind of exciting as we look at some of the topics today, Elisha,
mhm,
on talking about DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations, and we're also going to talk about metaverse interoperability. Two pretty big topics today. But as we think about those topics, right? Like, not a lot of people are talking about this. I saw a stat that was really impressive to me the other day, Elisha, that said that 70% of people that have invested in crypto came last year in 2021. Like overall, 70% of anybody that's ever invested in crypto happened last year. And so it's a very new topic. When we talk about bleeding edge and cutting edge, we're talking about things like this. And that means that there's going to be a lot of growing pains. There's going to be a lot of gaps. We're going to see a lot of big players that don't exist, right? And we're going to see a whole new flood of probably job opportunities, not just to build things, but to be able to interact in things like metaverses and thinking about yeah, like the DAO part. So I transparently, Elisha, am not as familiar as you are on the DAO part of things. So I'm actually partially going to be learning as you kind of share some things, and I might offer a different perspective, but I might ask some questions that maybe some other viewers might have along the way. So why don't we jump into that topic?
yeah, and I'm still I guess everyone is sort of new to everything blockchain, even though DAO technically existed, I think, for a little while now. But I think the utility or benefit of it has been more recently communicated and more widely now known because of the wider interest in like everything blockchain, everything Web3. How do we leverage all these things? And as I'm talking about the DAO, I want to share resources as I go because I think it's important that everyone has a chance to, read the same thing or do the research that I've done and be able to go back and kind of verify, is this my understanding, or like does Elish have different understanding reading the same thing? I think it's a collaborative effort where we all try to learn together and kind of educate each other. I'm pulling up this article from CoinMarketCap. The CoinMarketCap, you may have landed on to one of their pages in the past if you ever done things like how much is Bitcoin worth now, how much is Ethereum worth now. Oftentimes you land onto a landing page like this that shows the current price, and they're really ranked really well on the Google search engine. So you may have landed on one of their pages that shows a price trend and see like, oh, should I buy Ethereum now because it's on the lower price or not. But they have a lot of great resources, and one of them they talk about a deep dive into how top 10 DAOs work. That's the article that I'm going to reference because they actually do good introduction of what is DAO. And we don't really actually need to go actually into the 10 DAOs talk about, but the intro section is very useful to talk about. And I'm also going to kind of show bits of the article so that you have options yourself. And I'm also going to read some of it together so we can kind of learn along together. So they have a good introduction here. Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. So that's what DAO, DAO, I don't know what people say it these days, stands for, are fast becoming the gold standard for projects looking to create self-sustainable applications and services around the blockchain industry. So I think the first interesting bits is self-sustainable. I think if you look at Web 2 technologies, so like any social media, they're not self-sustainable. They're sustained by shareholders, venture capitalists, or angel investors. They are backed by some kind of institution. And by some kind of institutions, they're probably mostly American, US based institutions, or maybe Chinese based institutions where there is a big money involved in running Facebook and Google and TikTok and all these big services that we pretty much depend on our daily. Or if you even look at smaller organizations such as like startup companies that's only been around 2 3 years, a lot of the time the hesitation that you run into with startup software is if I put my effort in adding the data or interact with these applications, let's say someone created a CRM to solve unique problems. Maybe it's a CRM for your church or a CRM for your sports team. Well, that's great. Like it's better and more suitable than Salesforce because we're not trying to sell, we're trying to organize my sports team or something. But the worry that you might have is if I put an effort setting everything up and educate my staff on the software, what if the startup just goes away because they ran out of the fund, like, or the entrepreneurs, founders decide that it's not something they want to pursue anymore? You would call it dependent, right? You're dependent on factors like founders being active in the project. The DAO is here to basically solve the problem by becoming self-sustainable. It's not dependent on just like a few key person or having running out of budget. It is supposed to be self-sustainable. And later we're gonna see example where maybe it's not quite so self-sustainable yet. It's maybe still dependent on a lot of different things that's tied to physical world. But the idea is that it's not supposed to just disappear if one of the founders goes away. It's here to stay. And that's why a community can trust the existence. The community can trust that it would still continue to operate on its mission. And this concept unlocks new opportunities whereby the average blockchain application user can contribute and vote on developmental and non developmental changes. So, this is another interesting thing where if you work with the startup, if you work with enterprise, you really have no voting rights on what you want to see the application do in the future. A lot of startups, I think, have this concept of, hey, what do you guys want to see in our application? And there is like some application that even let you vote on the future, you know, features that you want to see or send a suggestion around the features that you want to see, right? Whereas blockchain voting is kind of like a baked in to its core. So as you participate in this organization, you basically have a voting right. And the voting right doesn't work like the voting for politics. There is a little bit more nuance to it, and it's not quite tied to like me as a person can cast a single vote. I could actually have more votes than a single vote, and we'll talk more about that later. So it's a little bit different from like elections voting, but it's a little bit more unique to the blockchain. But something to just remember
You,
is as a community member, you can vote
mhm.
on changes.
I was gonna ask, I guess a question because I've used some decentralized metaverses like Decentraland, right?
Mm,
Um, I know that they have a like if I go to like Decentraland voting, right, and I look that
mm,
up, I can see that there's a governance. I think it's called governance.decentraland.org. Maybe you can pull that up. Is
mm.
this essentially what you're talking about as it relates to the DAO? Do you mind pulling that up? I know it's kind of putting you on the spot here. Um, but things like being able to make changes in a metaverse based on transparency and voting and proposals, and the only way you get access is if you have like land. Is that in the same kind of realm of that conversation?
Yeah, yeah, it's very similar. I don't know if you
Okay.
had specific page, but this is what
Oh
you're
yeah.
talking about, right? Governance.decentraland.
I don't see it on your screen here, but yeah, I think I see.
Sorry. I
Yeah,
think
there we go.
it's there you go.
Yes, this one here. This one shows. So if I wanted to, for example, submit a proposal for something that I want to change inside of this metaverse of Decentraland, like, hey, I want to change this. It asks me to connect my MetaMask wallet, and then I go and connect it. Yeah, if you go to submit a proposal, and then it actually checks to see if I own land. And so in this particular case, I have to have land ownership. And depending on the size of the land that I own, that actually gives me a different weight of voting than others. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So is that kind of in the same realm? Is it more of applicable to a metaverse type of DAO voting, things like that?
Yes, yes.
Got it.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't work like a election, right? It's not a
Yeah.
fair election process. It really depends on those governance deciding like the point system basically. So you can have more points than other people. There's also a concept of delegating your voting. So let's say I really don't care about where this central land is going, but since I own a land, I'm going to delegate my voting power to this user
Mm,
on the chain, and I can say, "Hey, I really don't care about Johnny. If you care, I'll delegate my power to you." So you
got it.
basically have inherit like my voting power, and you can become a person with like a lot of voting power in the end if you're a popular person. And we're gonna actually touch on that later and see what happens to the person with a lot of voting power. But basically, that's the idea where governance is another thing that I was going to mention. And CoinMarketCap has like really nice glossary for each term, and I encourage you guys to check that out too. But if you search governance, it explains as what's the part of so they talk about off on chain governance, off chain governance, and on chain governance is what we are more familiar with in this land of the voting. On-chain governance is one of the primary structure for voting in blockchains. When a blockchain project has on-chain governance, the rules on who can participate in votes and make decisions are embedded in the chain itself. So this is like a transparent
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah.
So, for example, the land, right? If you own the land, you can participate in voting. That is embedded on the chain itself. It's not
Hmm.
some piece of paper that I write on a side, like, okay, Johnny has a right to vote, so make sure to invite him for the voting process. It's not like that. Like it's all visible. It's all on the chain, and I think I'm pretty sure I can even find a way to see how much voting rights you have.
Oh, interesting.
It
I
should
just
be
found
all
that as well.
transparent. Oh, you
I
did.
just
Okay.
found this on the so if you go to that same page, go back to that proposal page,
Uh-huh.
just for the sake of showing this, go back one where it says submit proposal, go back one. Yeah, if you go here and you click on transparency, this shows you some transparency, but then go ahead and click on transparency dashboard. That's on the left hand side. This actually gives you a breakdown. Yeah, transparency dashboard goes to data studio. And then if you go over to voting power and participation, this may be a little bit more applicable to you. You can see that it's 12 members own 38.9% of the voting power, percentage of delegated voting power. So maybe there's another example of what users have delegated and what percentage, right? So this is what you're talking about. It's like transparent, and
Yeah,
because it's on the blockchain, this allows transparency. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's a good page that you found. I didn't see this kind of page
I
before,
just was
actually.
poking around as you were talking, like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is really great. Yeah, so this is the point of on-chain governance, where it's super transparent who's involved. Whereas, I mean, in the traditional corporate structure, it is somewhat visible, right? Like if you're a public company, you can see like, oh, these are the the board members, and these executive have these much like shares. So those informations are transparent when you become a public company. But if you're I think private company, that's not really public information. So like when I was running startup, you wouldn't have known how much share of the company that I had, because it's not a
It's not
transparent
transparent. It's a
information.
private. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a private information. So on chain, like you can start to see how transparent these companies are run. Sometimes, like when you donate to a nonprofit organization, sometimes like you wonder where the money goes. You wonder how much the executives are paid over how much money actually goes to
Yep.
help the people you thought it's going to help, right? So it kind of brings interesting aspect of like maybe not anti real corporate structure or company structure, but they're really trying to be like, oh, we're different, we're transparent, we are inclusive, and we're going to touch on those philosophies of DAO. People believe what DAO is about, but we're going to talk a lot more about the reality of DAO as well, aside from just
Yeah. So there's a lot of
yeah.
positive things you talked about, but there seems to be some. Is it more recently that there's been some exposure to that stuff because it's becoming more popular, or how does that work?
Yeah, because it's becoming more popular. Just like in any technologies, the more traction it gets, the more exposure you get. So we'll touch on that. And let me finish going through the on-chain governments just a
Yeah.
little bit more here. So this means that all nodes, and the nodes is something that Decentraland, their website also mentioned. All nodes in the blockchain network have to approve proposed changes and adopt them in on the on-chain governance rules, so people can vote. Developers working on the project send out packages with proposal changes, and Node have the option to either accept or reject these changes. So the developers might be the actual engineers or companies behind Decentraland, and we all have to accept. In many aspects, on chain governance is considered more in tune with the underlying decentralization of cryptocurrencies. As all nodes get the right to accept or decline proposal improvement, decisions are made with everyone's participation. Of course, there are also some concerns with the fact that this structure puts a lot of power in the minor's hands. That's interesting.
Hmm.
And off chain is less popular, I think, or less adopted. Off-chain governance is the other main decision-making structure adopted by cryptocurrency projects. Bitcoin and Ethereum are both managed through off-chain governance. In the
Hmm.
governance method, developers, miners, users, and business supporters can participate in decision making. Okay, so it's not just the people with the voting rights with the open voting process. Maybe this is not so open. Bitcoin, for example, has a set of code developers who work on the project. They communicate through various mailing lists, interesting, and social media channels, and accept or decline changes. So instead of using decentralized approach to vote, they're using Web 2 technologies, apparently, and Web 1 and Web 2 technologies in conjunction to make some changes. Development proposals are gathered and reviewed by the core development team. However, these changes are not written out in the blockchain code, and validation by all miners and nodes is not necessarily. In this sense, off chain governance is more similar to traditional business governance and limits the level of decentralization in the project. That's interesting. So I think the rest, I guess it's not even that long. But I think the key is many blockchain projects have introduced governance tokens. So when you participate in like a lot of apps, like they'll often issue out like mana, or not the mana coins, because that actually has a currency tied to it. They might like randomly issue like a random tokens, and you're like, "What is this? Like, is there any value to this?" And
Yeah.
oftentimes, maybe there really isn't much value to it. Johnny, I know you had ENS address registered, which we're going to talk a little bit later as well. If you had ENS domain, so you have tryjohnny.eth. If you
Yep.
had it before October 31st last year, you would have got a token from them from airdrop,
Yep.
and that would have gave you voting power.
Interesting. I got mine like
So,
a month ago.
oh, you did? Oh, you did? Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You
it
got
was
the
more
ENS a month
recently.
ago. Yeah. So you didn't have that, and I think now you have to buy it if you want to vote from other
Hmm.
users. So those are governance tokens that sometimes they'll issue you out, and there are sometimes events like, hey, you are going to get like these tokens, like either airdrop if you own this NFT or if you participate in this or that, and basically you can buy it. So that makes it interesting, and maybe that's why not maybe not that's why, but I think traditional ones like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're not like open to just community voting on everything. They are a little bit more controlled. So that's something to note. But I would say most recent things are going on chain governance because I think that's the benefit that people see. And going away from like centralized governance, centralized Web2 tech to, hey, we all feel like we're part of it. It's more of a principle or value or belief system that maybe you want to follow, where it's more transparent, it's more fair. Sure, maybe the rich popular person still gets the most voting, right? But it still feel like I have a say in yes or no. Whereas
Mm.
maybe some off-chain system, you don't really have that say. So that was just a hopefully enough explanation around the governance as we go through how the DAO works. And it's really the last part here. While these top DAOs are mostly decentralized finance protocols, must be noted that there are plethora of DAOs serving various purposes, from venture and investment DAOs like Metacardo to grant DAO like Gitcoin, social DAOs like FWB, and social and media DAOs like Backless. So when we say DAO, like they're just different forms of it. There are different groups. In the last few videos ago, we talked about how there was a DAO that is trying to buy a golf course together to create
Mhm.
exclusive, golf club membership.
Yep.
So people form things. Maybe it's all virtual. Maybe it involves like buying an asset in the physical world. And we can also touch on the other DAO structure where there was some events happening recently. Any questions so far? I know we're gonna touch more on it with the actual examples
Yeah.
after this, but
No, this is making sense. Yeah, it's interesting. It's cool to see all the kind of the how it works from a transparency standpoint, the governance, the voting power, all of that. I mean, there's a lot of positivity, but yes, some of the other sides of it are also interesting, and I don't think we talk enough about those. So, no, yeah, let's keep it going.
cool. So first one that we can talk about is DAO and having voting power, and also how you're perceived outside of the DAO. So your personal life or what you do personally that is maybe separated from DAO, and how they're not quite maybe isolated or all decentralized after all. So I'm pulling up the article from The Verge. The man who got fired by his DAO. That's interesting. It's like you create a DAO, you kind of run it, but then you could get fired. And I think this is very interesting and a little bit of a contrast between traditional corporate structure where maybe you could get fired by a board of directors, but in this case, you're fired by the community, and it's almost like fired by employee, which is not something you would see happen.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, so the background, I'm trying to see if there's a good ground skipping the explanation of DAO. And a lot of these articles explain what the DAO is, and I think it's good to read it from different perspective, different people explaining different way. And that's, I feel like, the only way that you'll kind of understand. But one Web3 startup that created a DAO is Ethereum Name Service, or ENS. If you've been on Twitter and seen someone whose username ends in .eth, just like our own Johnny Rodriguez flexing his
Yeah,
ETH address,
there you
right?
go.
You found an ENS customer, and that's how I can tell. Oh, Johnny got ENS. ENS handles can be bought and sold like web domain names. So you can go to the ENS website and
Yep,
buy. Can I buy try Johnny.eth? Yes,
yep,
buy it. And could represent the start of an identity layer for Web3, like logging in with your Facebook account, but for crypto. And I guess, yeah, 300,000 people have registered name to date. So let's just go to ENS website. So this is ens.domains. And you could almost think of it like buying domain name for yourself, right?
exactly. What I didn't realize
Uh,
was I was like, "Oh, it's pretty cheap," and then I was like, "Ooh, gas prices." The gas fees. But
yeah.
no, I think it's worth mentioning, I guess, in this process, I was seeing a lot of the trend of people posting that. When I did go through the purchase process, it did say like, "Hey, you're number 212,124," or something like that. It gives you, like, the number that you are, and it, like, claimed it even after. It was kinda like, "You're part of the first 212,000 people to ever do this," right? And part of it was like part of that was like, "Ooh, that's cool," and then part of it's like, "Ooh, am I too early?" You know?
Yeah, it's like, is this legit? Is like the first
Yeah.
question I have with a
Yeah.
lot of the app, or the decentralized app is how we call it. And let me pull up my wallet version here of the browser, and we can actually learn about how to secure your wallet a little bit better after learning about some interesting thing happening with the other project we're going to talk about. But yeah, here you can come here and then search like, hey, can I buy like Elisha.eth? And the answer is that I know like it's not possible because someone else owns this. And
I don't see it
the
updating on the screen, by the way. Maybe you're showing it.
oh, sorry. Yeah, let me share my other screen. Okay. So I basically entered in Elisha.eth, and
There it
looks
is.
like someone else owns it. And I guess I can even look at who this. Oh, this person owns like a lot of
Ooh, they own a
different
lot.
ETH. Yeah, yeah. I thought I wanted to get it, but like if I can't get my first name, then it's gonna be my full name, and I never had trouble registering with my full name ever on internet
Yeah.
because there's nobody else apparently in the world with my combination of first name last name. So
Challenge
then I'm
accepted.
like,
My next
yeah,
child is gonna be named Elisha Terrada.
Elisha Rodriguez. But yeah, so I'm like, well, then I don't really care about like securing my own name because it's like guaranteed that I'm gonna able to get it
Nobody will
later.
ever get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then I don't know if I'm gonna give myself other name, or maybe I'll think about it. And I know you use Chai Joni everywhere, and that's kind of cool that you have like pick the username.
Yeah. I would prefer my first and last name like yours. It took me years to get my domain that way, but yeah, it was taken, so I had to go with my normal structure.
Yeah. So yeah, you can basically register your name, and the point is that instead of people sending like airdrops or a gift or whatever to this long like cryptic address that you may have seen if you ever opened your wallet, they'll give you like interesting like hashed unique combinations of like numbers and letters. people can just send it to tryjohnny.eth. It's kind of similar to like on PayPal, how you can create a unique username. So instead of
Yeah,
entering
it's easier to
your
remember.
your email address to pay your money, and like you can just do try Johnny as username PayPal. It's kind of like
I
that,
found
and
it
I thought it's
Yeah, I found it
yeah,
most
go ahead.
useful for, like, people on Twitter sometimes will be like, "Hey, we're gonna do a giveaway, put your ETH address." And so they actually, like, will require you to have a unique domain because they don't wanna have to go type that in, and plus, it's just kinda weird to put all the numbers and all that in there. So then you'll see, like, whatever.eth, whatever.eth, and so that ends up being a long list of everyone that has that. Um, and then it also is easy for me to remember. So like there are tools that I use all the time. There's one that I'm using right now. I guess I won't promote it right now, but anyway, it's like a menu, a Mac menu thing where I can open it and see all of my NFT assets and things like that. And to set that up, it just says type in your ETH address. So I type tryjohnny.eth, and then I don't have to remember what my wallet address is. And then it pulls in all my assets in real time, and I can track. So as I'm signing into new apps to track maybe floor prices or to see like my collections across different platforms, it becomes just an easier way for me to like log in or connect my stuff.
Got it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I see that Twitter has been like the forefront of like every new Web3 stuff. People just kind of show it off first on the Twitter, right? So like you have tryjourney.eth, and the avatar itself, I think, is coming from the. Is it your just avatar, or is this the NFT from somewhere?
Oh, the one on the profile picture?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's not an NFT. It's actually my Ready Player Me avatar,
Oh, got it, got it.
which is the one I
Yeah.
use across most metaverses right now, and I will be
Oh,
talking
got
about
it.
that one later. But yeah, that's what I brought in. But it doesn't have the special
The
polygon shape that clarifies that it's an NFT, because it is
right,
not
right,
an
right.
NFT.
Yeah, I think Twitter is such a great place to see what people are doing, and if people start to do the same thing, you can tell that's like on trend of what's next, right? And this author actually talks about the experience of getting the ENS for themselves, and I think as a writer, they just wanted to like become familiar with this trend, and fund it $100 each with ETH, and then it turned into interesting event. And I think this might be the start of the paragraph. On November 1st, a few months later, had acquired the ETH name. I think they started to talk about how the Singapore nonprofit company who is basically behind the ENS, True Names Limited, that supports the ENS. I think they had a statement. Wait a minute. That represents further effort to decentralize the project. Oh yeah. So there is a company that True Names Limited that basically were organizing this ENS effort. What it did is to create a DAO out of their organization. So this is an interesting structure where initially it was a company or nonprofit company behind that was leading the effort, and then you create a DAO after the fact. If you're working in software industry, you might be familiar with this concept where a company like maybe Facebook start to create like an internal tool chain and actually eventually open source it like React. Or it could be a company that offers SaaS service for engineers, like Sentry and different applications where initially they will give you SDKs and like, oh, download our SDK from here. But eventually they actually open source their SDK so everyone can see what's behind and how they can contribute to improve the SDK as a user, and not just relying on a company to fix all the problems they might have or the feature requests they might have. It's similar in that in this case there was a True Names Limited that existed before that decided, hey, let's create a DAO out of it so the governance of ENS is self-sustainable, as opposed to all the world depending on True Names Limited to continue to exist. So you don't want to buy like a .com domain thinking that it's tied to a single company. And if the single company dies, your .com domain just expires. Like you don't want to have that kind of dependency, right? You want to be independent of it. So instead of depending on True Names Limited for all the ENS domains, the DAO is formed after to make it more independent, less dependent, self sustainable, where it does not depend on this one single company. The core components of ENS are decentralized and self running, e.g., no one can take away another person's ETH name. And they put a lot of effort in this. I will show the diagram later. But there are a few things that require some human direct discretion. We believe that both ENS and the DAO space have matured enough that now is the time to pass ENS governance over to the community via the creation of DAO and the dollar ENS governance token. So instead of relying on company and an executives, board of directors, they decide to issue ENS governance token, just like the Decentraland token. So the community can vote on where it's headed. If you own the ENF address on October 1st, you could claim your share of governance tokens. The precise number was determined by how long you had held your name, how many names you registered, and how active you have been in the community. So instead of owning land, they are measuring your voting power at this point by October 31st by how involved you are, how much you are invested in the community, how much name you registered, all these things. So you can see this on-chain governance, they take a different approach in how much points you get, how much voting power you get. And the author just talks about their experience and powered someone on Twitter. I bought a little more ETH to cover transaction fees. And soon 251 ENS tokens belong to me. He said, or he or she, I forgot which author was. I delegated their voting power to someone follow on Twitter and stopped thinking about it. So you can have voting power and you can just delegate it away so that you don't have to think about it. Maybe you don't really care beyond just owning the ETH domain. And then the ENS tokens, I guess they appreciate in value. So this person talked about how the total US dollar equivalent holding became more than $20,000. And this is concerning for this person as an author of the Birch because they're not supposed to like own like stocks and things like that because the Birch article have some power to influence, price of things to go up or down. So this person just talk about their experience of like, oh, I didn't mean to own this as valuable cryptocurrency asset. I just wanted it to participate, or I didn't even care about like having like this much ENS tokens, right? Now, eventually it goes down in value, so they're free from it. But that's something to think in mind if you participate in these communities and somehow be granted those tokens. Maybe they will just airdrop you the tokens. You want to be careful depending on the industry that you work on and think about the ramification of owning these things and what it means if you sell it away back to the community like, hey, I don't want ENS, I'm just gonna sell it. Well, now you owe tax to your government, most likely in your region. Apparently there are some places where you don't have to pay crypto tax and it's becoming a popular destination to retire, but in most places you have to pay tax. And this is where story starts to unfold. And this happened just recently, just like last week or last 2 weeks. And the key person that we talk about is Brantley Milligan. In keeping with the complex nature of ENS project, Milligan served many roles. For 3 years, he was director of operations of True Names Limited. So he is involved in this physical world Singapore company uh, as the director of operations. So that's one key aspect. When the DAO was formed, he became one of the handful of official steward hey, let's create a DAO out of our organization and let's put our own people, our own employee as part of the people leading it, which makes sense because who else is going to lead, right? And also as its top delegate, receiving more delegated votes than any other person or company. Coinbase and Rainbow are also top delegates in the ENS DAO. There's more. The ENS tokens are governed by separate foundation. Milligan is a director. In recent weeks, as their profile grows, some leaders in the Web3 community have been the subject to one of the world's most dangerous act of scrutiny, a search through their old tweets. So I think we've been seeing this cancel culture
Hmm.
where this person says something 10 years ago, let's cancel this person. So they were subject to the same thing. So, Johnny, when we become popular one day, we have to delete our old tweets to make sure.
I think they're pretty much permanent now. So even if you delete it, there's a lot of apps that just keep it all. So yeah,
Oh,
you
true.
do gotta be careful and opinions are opinions, but also yeah, it's yeah, I mean that's a whole nother topic, the cancel
Yeah.
culture and all that. But it's yeah, it looks like they they were scrutinized and went back to some of that. And oftentimes you'll see that there were racism or
Hmm.
homophobic or misogyny or whatever,
Yep.
and
Yep.
sometimes you don't think that people go back and look at that, but
Yep.
you know.
And yeah, this mention about Cooper Turley was removed from Friends with Benefits DAO. It's kind of interesting DAO name, but uh, based on 2013 tweets. And this week, community managed for the NFT trading platform Super Rare. I think we all know this. And parted ways with the company after some old racist tweets were unearthed. It's very interesting how perhaps a lot of racist tweeting people are behind his organization. And I don't want to generalize, but like they get attacked so easily because it's easy attacking point. And there's so many people who is interested in things being disrupted, not maybe all about like being, let's create a fair, justified world. Sometimes there is a pump and dump effort where we see this often in stock market where you pump up the price of something like, wow, ENS is so great. And you keep buying all those tokens or shares and immediately like dump it and like you sell it and then like immediately release a news about something about this person or the company and like let the price go down a
Mhm.
lot so that people are forced to sell, right? And then like you sell all these with the scheduled pricing, or you sell it with the I'm sorry, you can sell with the in the stock option where you can benefit actually from price going down. So there are a lot of scheme that happen. So it may not just be like community of people who feel like they have justice to like you know kind of unearth these things. It might be some effort behind that where we're maybe more manipulated as opposed to like more genuine effort. And we've seen in Web2 world with Facebook and all these ads campaigns where we realize there's some big company with the economic incentive behind sometimes with these efforts to cancel these things. So that's something to be aware of. But there is a statement with the Milligan. He's being Catholic. He stated, that his statement, and that was basically found back in 2016, where people decide to, talk about it as like, hey, like, should this person really be leading, ENS? Because in principle, it's supposed to be like all inclusive and fair and it's all transparent. Only thing matters is the governance token, not other things. But they suppose things are maybe not quite working out in this case, right? And he doubled down on his statement. Hey, like I stand by my statement that I made back in the time, but hey, like I think he says like, hey, I never excluded anyone from ENS or my work or even my personal life because of who they are or what they believe. And he says, I believe in working with and also being friends with a wide range of people. Yes, I believe Catholic doctrine and not changing that. And I don't think it's practical or moral for the Web3 industry to exclude the many traditional minded Christians, Muslims, Jews, and others who agree with me. I'm obviously aware many people disagree with me, and that's fine. I believe in tolerance with the wide net. I live that out. And then I ask others to give me and other the same. And how, and this article talks about how usually when a CEO is exposed of something, like, well, employee have nothing that they can do. Maybe the board of directors can do something about it. But even in that case, sometimes the CEO, usually the founder of the company, holds like stronger voting power than the rest of board of directors. So it's hard to get the person fired. But in this case, we find out that the company, the True, I forgot True Name Limited, the company let the person go, as well as the DAO, ENS DAO voted him out. And this is where I want to kind of pause on. And it kind of talks about two different things. One, how do we kind of mix match this idea of my personal belief in this decentralized, inclusive world and what we think of this voting power that's given to the community who can make a change, even as the fire, the key person of the DAO organization. Let's talk about the first part, Johnny. Do you have an immediate thought
What would repeat
around this?
the first part? Yeah, I mean this is interesting.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. The first part is if I make a personal statement on Twitter,
Oh yeah.
should it affect my position, my legitimacy or authenticity or whatever you call it, right? My whole existence, should it be tied to DAO, decentralized organization? Can I make a statement that's maybe as strong as calling something evil, murder, right? Like this is very strong. Like it's not just like, oh, I disagree with abortion. It's kind of like making a statement like, oh, like
Mm-hmm.
anyone who
Yeah, yeah,
do abortion is evil and murder, right? Like that's pretty
yeah,
strong statement that maybe rejects someone, even though he says like, hey, I love you all, like I'm not gonna judge you,
yeah.
you know, right?
I mean, I think I mean, I guess, yeah. It just kind of this is definitely like a sticky topic for sure. I would say that I yeah. I guess the question is, if I were to make a statement like that, should that affect my position? Should that be, is essentially like, should it be registered on the DAO? Or should it affect my position and what I'm doing? And I think that we have to remember that we are part of other systems and other organ. Like, it's not always just about us. And so, even though we do have strong opinion, maybe we all have strong opinions. Um, a lot of times, you are, especially if you're in a leadership position. I think we have to remember who we represent or what we're representing, and remember that we are speaking for a collective whole. And so, I think there is an extra responsibility um, to not to, like, everyone can have their opinions, but to keep some of those things to ourselves, because then if we do start to express those things, right, then it starts to reflect upon the organizations that we represent, or other employees, which a lot of times not everyone's going to have the same opinion. So yeah, I think that it's my roundabout way of saying, like, yes, I do think it should affect somebody. I think that we have to be careful about what we say and how we do it. Obviously, now everything's like, not necessarily on the blockchain, right? Where like everything is transactions, or you have a receipt for everything.
Mm-mm,
But in a
mm-mm.
way, we have a trail, we have breadcrumbs for everything we've said online. Um, I remember there being like a trend maybe 10 years ago where on Facebook there was like an app that you can connect to. You logged in using your Facebook login, and then it played this video. It was a super creepy video. I think it's called Lollipop or something like that. I don't know if you ever saw this, and it's essentially
Mm-mm.
like this
I never seen.
creepy guy. It's just a short film. It's a creepy guy, and he's like basically in this dark room looking at a computer. And because I've logged in using my Facebook page, it basically looks at all of your data on Facebook that you've ever posted. It knows locations, it knows
I think
photos,
I
it knows your
remember that.
friends. And then like
Yeah.
it's a short, like maybe 1 to 3 minute thing, and it's a really creepy guy. And but yeah, it sees him looking at the computer and seeing like my girlfriend at the time, or whoever it was, and then seeing like my siblings, seeing where I was going to school, locations and things I was doing, playing videos. And then it's kind of like, hey, be careful what you put online, right? The reason I share that is because we have to remember that like we are leaving a breadcrumb of everything we do, right? And the more present we are online, the more we're leaving that behind. I'm not saying stop using social media, because I'm a pretty big consumer and user of social media. I'd like to discontinue some things. I use Twitter and I like TikTok and things like that, but I've discontinued other things like Facebook and Instagram. But it's important to remember that people do watch, and it does get registered, and like it does follow us, and uh, we should just be careful about how we're representing ourselves and things like that. So yeah, it's a tricky topic, but I do think that like I don't think those things should have been voiced. I do think that yeah, especially when it comes to like a decentralized thing, right? In a sense, it should be like, well, it shouldn't affect anybody, right? Because the whole point is that it's public and transparent. But then there's elements of like how we represent things based off of like our roles and leadership. So definitely
Mhm.
a tricky topic.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is people hold different belief about what decentralized world should be, where it's supposed to be inclusive, but it's not supposed to be censored. But there's like a balance of what's being censored. Like in this case, like you could say he's being canceled or censored based on what he did outside of the DAO itself. And it kind of probably ask us the question, probably
Yeah.
never ending question of like, where's the balance? Where do
Yeah.
the world agree? Like maybe some statements are like, I don't know, maybe like in some countries, right? Like in Philippines, like abortion isn't a thing. Like you pretty much have to have go through with it. And for them, like the belief sounds like, yeah, of course, that's a norm. Like that's what we grew up holding, that value, right? And maybe they would express the same cultural value on Twitter because that's their physical cultural value that they're tied to. But on the internet, especially with, other first world countries holding more maybe liberal values, right, compared to maybe some traditional country where they tend to hold more conservative or long running traditional values, where based on who you talk to, what we think is a norm is not our norm. And I think we kind of seen some of it in MLB, the or not Black Lives Matter movement, where in the US it was such a big deal, but in some countries they saw it as like, well, what about Asians? What about like other race? Like why are we the center of discussion? And only thing we could say to them is like, well, you don't understand. You don't understand the history. You don't understand, context. And now we have to ask the same question globally to the entire world. Hey, this thing happened on Twitter, and ENS is participated probably by everyone in the world, right? Who can afford to buy the ENS domain. And how do you communicate? Like, hey, you don't understand the context of what this happened. This is a big deal. Like to me, it feels like a big deal because I'm in US, right? But if I'm in Japan, or maybe you're if you're in the Philippines, or if you're in some other country where this is like, yeah, like of course, like everyone holds the same, you know, value of Catholic doctrine. Like, what's the deal? People might think it's unfair that he gets fired for being who he was, right? So I think it kind of asks us question like, how do we like we couldn't even figure this out with all the government from the world holding, their conferences, once in a year to come together with what we agree on. Even then, it's just only the top 11 countries or top however many countries who participate.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's interesting. Yeah, it's stuff that we probably never thought that we'd have to cover, but it's like as these new technologies and systems and get are in place, it's something that we have to be able to figure out and all of that. So yeah, it gets tricky.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just go through the rest a little bit more quickly because we have hard stop in less than 20 minutes. But yeah, the takeaway in this case is the power is literally in your hands. If community doesn't like it, maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's not so much about this philosophy or that philosophy. Maybe there is an influencer who speak about how we should understand this event or that event. But in the end, it's the community power, and the community has power to vote and be changed in how they think. And eventually, I think there's still a danger in this structure because one, there is few people who can still have majority voting. So if you can target the person to change their mind, just like how the Cambridge Analytica did, right? They did it with the bigger, more swayable voters. And what if we do the same thing with the DAO voters? You can probably try to sway them, right, in some ways. So yeah, it's decentralized, but it can still be influenced in negative ways. So something to still think about this. And I want to mention on the oh yeah, you can read about ethics policy, True Names Limited. But the last thing I want to talk about it, and this is more shorter and kind of leaves it, I think, more for the people on the stream to kind of read through this whole thread and about this DAO organizer who almost got scammed by his Discord community. So he was trying to run the DAO, and it has to do with open source BT or aircraft and air taxi protocol. I don't know too much about you know what this is about, but you can form DAO in different ways. And he talks about how he or she met this person who's like expressed interest in BTOL space and like, hey, I want to participate. Like, I got the energy and ideas. Let me help. And of course, like, oh wow, that's cool. Someone has interest in what I like in my organization that I started, and that's a huge like compliment, right, to someone who's starting something new. And they talk about this thread of conversation and how active this person is and how participating this person was. And this was exciting because like, wow, this person is active and it seems very authentic. And it eventually leads into the events of like this person who was passionate about the project brought another friend who is also organizing this thing called Space Falcon. It's like a new NFT that this person is going to mint and produce. And in the end, it leads to weird conversation where the friend is asking, "Hey, like, help me test this out, and please use your main wallet to participate in this like experiment." And this person is like, sure, like, okay, like this sounds a little weird, but I guess it's okay. Like, I guess our communication is a little bit weird, but like, hey, I'm gonna look past these things because you're probably in the honeymoon mood of like generally things looks good, so let's like keep going with it. And in the end, it leads to an event where this person realized, you know, they got almost hacked, like got pulled up Etherscan for new address where I stuck the first NFT, and my blood goes ice effing cold. That this thing I proved was not like what I thought I was getting. It's like something else. And then they almost like transferred all the money out of like his wallet, and then he talks about more technical thing about how much, what was the function that was running behind, because it's after all programming language, and trying to get all this cash out of him. And maybe Johnny, you might be able to explain the whole series of events a little bit better, but the general sense is that you, as someone organizing DAO and finding people joining your initiatives, and you almost got scammed out of it, and this person trusted this person, or started to trust this person more because of, you know, authenticity and like participating in the community and passion that this person brings, even though this person wasn't doing the best work that they could do. And I think the reader should kind of read this because it's kind of hard to summarize in like a short amount of time. But the points that I want to talk about is the value you're holding as a DAO organizers that led to this event of almost trusting this person all the way, and the security of holding your hot wallet. And maybe the lesson learned here is that you might want to have a secondary or tertiary wallet to participate in these events. But let's first talk about the first part, Johnny. I think part of what happened with this person, and I assume this person is probably from US or well-spoken English country, and that leads me to understand that this person is probably from the first world country. Most likely US is my guess. We hold this value where time is money. We value when someone spends their time. Yes, money is important. Thanks for donation. Thanks for all this. But we value the culture of people volunteering their time. US apparently is one of the highest uh, country with the rate of the time spent in volunteering. Like we care about volunteering. We care about like doing activities. I think some of us are maybe raised with the value, right? With the church involvement, with the, you know, Girl Scouts, Boy Scout, all these programs that we have in the United States where we value time, maybe more so than money. We even share values like, hey, like I wish I had more time. I wish I could go back in youth and try redo my life over, as opposed to I wish I had $1 billion left in my bank when I die. And I think this person almost got into the trap of like, hey, I really appreciate this person being active. Like this person talks about how the work the person was doing, Heckshire was Shine wasn't as good as what this person expected to be, but like, hey, I still love your passion.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's, I guess, I don't know if you mentioned this part, but like the main reason, so the amount that was on the line that he could have lost was $125 million. It's a lot of money. He actually had more in his wallet. So we're not talking about like a few $100s or a few $1,000s. We're talking about $125 million. And the only reason he didn't get scammed, I mean, he got scammed, but the only reason he didn't lose it was that he chose at the last minute to use a new Ethereum address. Like, hey,
Mhm,
just to be safe. And because he did that, he ended up actually like, yeah, being okay. And so um he actually looked into it. Like, but
mhm,
I can tell you, like, having I buy and sell NFTs, and I'm involved. I have crypto wallets. I have a few of them on Solana and Ethereum and all that. I wouldn't have known to do what he did. I wouldn't have known to go and look. And then, like, if you
mhm,
look further down in that chain, he shows like the code, and he's like, "Man, thank goodness I was in there and I looked, like this part right here, where he's like, wow, thank goodness I found this." Right? I couldn't tell you what I know how to code and do some stuff there, but like I wouldn't have known that this would have been a problem. I would have lost my money, right? And so this guy, he is US based. He's the founder of the Arrow DAO. So he's the founder of that. So he's got a little bit more knowledge. He only lost he still lost some money, I think, but he didn't end up getting completely scammed. But it's true. It's like he went with his emotions and his feelings of like,
mhm,
wow, Like, even though I don't really know what metaverse thing this person is, it's a friend of a friend now. They're super involved. They're being proactive. Um, like, yeah, I'll help out. And it's like, I don't know if you're seeing this, Elisha, but I'm involved with a lot of like NFT Discord channels, and I can't tell you how much spam I get. Where it looks
Hmm.
like, oh, I need to go and like, they're like, hey, you made it to the white list. Go ahead and click here, and you're gonna get part of the 7,777. And at the beginning, I'd be like, ooh, that's cool. Like I got in finally. I haven't really been participating, but that's kind of cool. And it's like, boom, that's an easy way to get scammed. And this is
Hmm.
happening every single day. And now these Discord channels are showing there's like a new channel on almost every Discord thing that says scams or something like that to report scams. And a lot of times they'll change their names that look really official, like the word
Mm,
announcement. It'll say like announcement, or it'll have the same name as the owner, and then or stuff like that, right? It's like what we're seeing with sometimes with emails, what this
mm.
person saw in this Discord channel, but it's like there's more and more happening, and I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
like
tricky.
we
Yeah,
thought we got past the website showing you are the millions visitor,
yeah,
claim your reward. Like we thought we got past that, but like nope,
yep.
we all fall.
It still exists, and it's gonna be new
Yeah,
ways of doing that, right?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
sure we'll find that in other things. And like I've seen people on Discord being like, "Wait, I thought I was minting, and like, what happened?" And they're like, "No." And that's why there's another typically another channel that's called official links. Because what will happen is people will say, "Oh, you can go mint," or "Hey, they're being resold really cheap," and so you'll go and buy it. And what it is that somebody went and made a new collection where there's nobody buying or selling, and then you're buying something that looks exactly like physically it looks like the same JPEG, right? Or the same
Mm-hmm.
video or the same 3D file. And you're like, I own it. Yes. And then it's like, no, you didn't buy it from the official location. Even though it was on OpenSea, you just got scammed, right?
Yep,
And you
yep,
paid a lot of your ether. And now somebody made money because they just copy pasted. And
yep.
so this is a big problem, I would say, as we think about the future of the metaverse, right? Is like not only is a crypto wallet a big jump, right? Like I'm not going to get my dad or my grandparents to ever get a crypto wallet. There's a big hurdle there. But then there's also like retaining your private key. Then there's no customer support number. I can't talk to MetaMask, right? I can't talk to Phantom app. Um, then there's
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
how do you fund it? I told you about my 14 15 days of waiting to get something funded, having to go through Coinbase, and then Coinbase to actually being able to use the funds, and then transferring those to my crypto wallet, and then actually seeing that. And then it's like, so there's just so many hurdles, but then you start to add like the scamming, you start to add like the unfamiliarity of what's going on in those areas, and if you're new, it can be really daunting. And so these are big hurdles. It's good that you brought this up because there's a lot of awesome things happening with DAOs and all
mm-hmm,
stuff like that. But then there's also this other end of like we still have a long way to go.
mm-hmm. Yep.
So
And in case people want to secure their wallet, Ledger is one of the product that I personally haven't used, but it's one that gets recommended a lot of the time. I think they're one of the two players
I've
in
never
this
heard of
space.
this.
Yeah, so you can have a physical. A MetaMask can be hot and cold wallet, which maybe we'll touch on maybe other time. But you can basically have MetaMask tied with your Ledger hardware device, and then further secure you, and then you'll get this device
Hmm.
physically approved, things like that. Yeah, because it's scary, right? Like when there's a pop-up on the screen that shows like a MetaMask connect. Like, wait, is that a real MetaMask thing, or is it like a website popover that looks like a MetaMask thing, right? And by clicking on it, maybe you're like giving your money away or you're gifting something away. It's just like there's so much scam today that unfortunately I can't recommend this to everyone until all these are kind of figured out, mostly like where things are safe. Like, nowadays you can trust your Chrome browser more because they block a lot of things ahead of you. They show
Mhm.
like red, stop, like this site doesn't look right, or the SSL certificates expire, don't trust this website. Until there is those like common sense like security best practices are in place, we probably can't even recommend to other people. And even ourselves, we might even get scammed, right? Like the other day I was looking at an NFT and like, wow, this collection is getting pumped. and like I can get it. It's still there. Like, and I was like, wait a minute, let me do a little research. And then, of course, there's someone talking about how it's a scam, right?
Mm.
It's like we are so easily the target of FOMO, right? Like we're just like, oh man, like this is a limited collection, and we know how limitedness is a value. It's not like a limited product where they'll restock eventually. It's not like the what do you call the crowdfunding products right out
Oh,
there.
Kickstarters or something like that.
Kickstarter, right? It's not like a Kickstarter where like, okay, maybe I don't get a discount if I don't get it now, but I can see people first try it and then I can
Well,
eventually get it, right?
and that's the tricky thing with that. I guess just to tangent a little bit on that particular topic is that I think that in a certain way, it's not like a Kickstarter where you're getting discounts, but it is a Kickstarter in a sense where somebody can claim we're gonna have this awesome game that we're gonna build. There's gonna be a whole metaverse. It's gonna be interoperable. It's gonna be this, and they literally could mint 10,000 NFTs and they can just pull the plug and they can say, all right,
Yeah.
cool, see you guys. And it is like Kickstarter. That's happened in Kickstarter. I've like products
Yeah,
that
it
I've
did.
invested in where I've been like,
Yeah.
man, that's awesome. And then nothing happens and they steal the money, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's no way of knowing. And that's why, like, eventually, Elisha, I think we should talk about like a topic on like when you are investing in NFTs, what are you looking for? What are the signs? What are the 10 things you're looking for that give you like authenticity, that show that
Mm-hmm.
there's the right hype, that shows that their
That's good.
roadmap's solid, because those things are important as we think
That's good
about.
to cover.
Yeah,
Yeah. We can show maybe there's even something that shows application that might pull up even like the governance involvement. Like how is this
yeah,
organization involved in past projects or something like that? But it's still not a common knowledge where we say like, duh, you can check it by going here. It's still not like a common knowledge that we all have. So it will be good, right? Like even with the Kickstarter, they cracked all these things down now that like one, you have to have a prototype to even participate, right? And two, I only participate in Kickstarter where there's already a company that produced something versus it's a first time for them.
yeah,
So there are resources that maybe we can create and uh,
yeah.
summarize in a page. Maybe we can put it up on Fresh Labs website
Yep.
that we're working on right now. And today we're running out of time. Thanks for watching the stream. And next time we're going to cover your topic, Johnny, about the metaverse and avatar and identity and all these
Yep.
things kind of
Yep.
combined together.
Yeah, I think this was a
Uh,
great topic today, Elisha. I appreciate the info. I learned a lot in the process. Hopefully, everyone that's watching or is watching us either live or after has also learned some things from this. But it's some amazing opportunities, but also things that a little bit of a gap still to get to some of those areas.
yeah, well, keep following us and subscribe to us. And, we have social media links on our Twitter, and we also have this YouTube channel. If you're watching from Twitter, you might have to follow to our YouTube channel to get more updates in the future. But we are planning to cover more of these topics in Web3 metaverse in the future. So thanks everyone for watching live or in the future, and look forward for the next one where Johnny talks about more topics.
Absolutely.
Thank you.